Hello, the game has started. It's me to go first. I have a great rack. I've drawn the first blank, and the rest of the rack are bingo-y tiles, but I do have some duplicates. So, do I have a bingo? I surely do. I have Relly Avey, I think, and nothing is going to score more. That's not good. Okay, what am I confusing that with? Okay, let me go through the alphabet and see what comes to mind. An inauspicious start there. Really Avey, really Avo. Let me just go back to the D. Let me go back to the F, the V rather, for Valia. Right, let me get my Scrabble head on. Valia is good because the blank is a V, and that's a non-bingo-y tile. Just wondering how best to position this. I guess I want to put an I in the middle. Because that's the least useful tile for reaching the triple word squares. So Valia for 64. Wow, that's pretty good. I have higher sign and hyenic. Valia has blocked both of those. And then any 8-letter plays are going to be pretty low probability. However, I do have quite a few floaters to choose from, so let me consider them. V certainly doesn't look useful. Nor the E. And the I both duplicate tiles on my rack. L looks a little better, but I'm not seeing anything. How about the R? High racine, perhaps? Possible, but I may be confusing that with higher sign. So hopefully my opponent will provide an opening. If he doesn't, I do have hyenic as a double-double in column 11. Valia takes no hooks, and the V prevents parallel plays. Now TI takes nothing in front, and higher sign and hyenic neither plays. Just confirming that. But I do have hyenic as a double-double for 68. Great, that's a pretty good pickup. Despite the G, U, and V, it is balanced and it feels close to a bingo. And I think I did have a bingo in mind when I said great. It was ringing a bell. However, it has not subsequently come to mind. I may have been initially thinking of Feld Grau, which would be an 8, but I would need the V to be an F. So, what to do here? Board quite tight because of the V. That's really preventing the left-hand side of the board developing. But that's fine because I lead by 100 points. Hyenic takes no hooks. C takes nothing in front, so opponent will struggle to get value out of this I. Wow! Bingo for opponent. 62 points. Absolutely splendid spot. 9-letter word. So do I have a bingo? Well, I think ungraved may be good, but hyenic is blocking that. What about the other floaters D, I, and A. None of those look promising. So how to sort the rack out? Well, certainly playing off G, U, and V. Where can I do that? Well, I could play Gov down here. And although it takes an S, Dietitian took an S, so I'm not creating a new S lane, and if opponent is to lay down an S bingo, I'd rather he did it in row N rather than row M, because he'll be providing access to triple word squares. This rack leave is good, but is there a better spot? The score of 15 points is pretty tragic. Well, I could play Vagued. 22 points, but that's wrecking the rack, and this is a good rack. I'm going with this. Okay, well that looks fairly good. I would have Seadrome from an S. Do I have anything with the available floaters? I have over as a prefix through the V, but overmade, made over, not good. What about the D? No, not seeing anything there. And my rack is already vowel heavy, so I think that's exhausted the floaters. Wow, opponent creates a new bingo lane. Vo takes an E in front, and I have a couple, but I do not have a 7-letter bingo on my rack. Just wondering if I should take that spot. What else is available? My lead is pretty slender. Well, what can I achieve here? If I get my M doubled, then I'll be sticking a vowel under this triple letter square, making life easy for opponents. I'm just wondering, given how close this rack is to a bingo, whether I'd be better off opening the board up. Or, how many Ds to come? 2 Ds to come. I was thinking of playing Emo or Demo. So Emo leaves a very good 4-letter set. It's creating a lane for my D. I'm retaining an E for Evo. Only 13 points, though. That is awful. Let me just put this back. Surely I can do better than that. 14 minutes on my clock. And I'm sticking a triple letter square next to OE for a play onto the V, so I think I've rejected that. But is there another spot for Emo? Well, what about Move? Creating 2 new lanes, and I'm quite keen to do that because I do like this 4-letter set. I think it is a very good 4-letter set, and therefore creating new lanes is a good thing. I am going with this. Well, I don't have a bingo, but I do have a good scoring tile in the Z. That was a pretty rubbish pickup, actually. I, U, and Z. Now, do I have a play in row C? Getting the Z doubled. Not seeing one. I have Dersey on my rack, which would get rid of all my problem tiles. That plays in column 5, making DE. That still plays. And I lead by 30 points. Well, opponent creates a new hotspot in row D. But I'm not sure, even if I could get my Z doubled, I'm not sure if that would be a wise thing to do. And I'm not seeing a way of doing that in any event. I certainly would like to get rid of the U with the Z, given how bingo-y the rest of the rack is. I haven't seen any way to do that apart from Dersey. 12 minutes on my clock. So I think I will go with this. Dersey for... Wow, look at that rack leave. Awful. Does that mean I shouldn't do this? Let me just put this back. What about a play of Z? That's 39 points. Still vowel heavy. What about a play of Azure? That protects the Z from being used by opponent for score. It's a better rack leave. 30 points. Is this the right play? Well, gosh, I am dwelling on this play. I feel there could be quite a big difference between this play and the best play. And I'm just noticing that in row D, I could play a something RED play. So I could play raided and retain ZU. $31 points. I'm going with Azure. Well, my rack has now drifted away from being bingo-y. Yeah, opponent takes that spot. I have Mifty on my rack, but that doesn't quite play parallel to Azure. My lead, still pretty small, and I no longer have an E for making Evo. So board super tight, in fact. What to do here? I'm wondering about playing just FY, which I can do next to Azure. Is there a way of playing off more tiles? Ah, well, what about playing Mifty here? That's a much better rack leave and a decent score, and I'm not providing anything massive for opponent. Not good. I guess I've got Bident in row C, but there are still all 4 S's to come, and Bident takes an S. Plus, I'd be setting up an X spot. Great, opponent slowing down. Let me see what Bident scores. That's 31 points. It is a decent score. The board is quite choked. If I don't go in this spot, I'm leaving a bingo lane available for opponent. S in 3rd place isn't as dangerous as S in 7th place. I can't play above paired. I am going with this. Wow, I draw 2 S's. I also draw the Q. Fortunately, there is a spot for the Q. And I could actually play cheese in that spot, leaving a very good 5-letter set. Difficult to know anything about opponent's rack from his play of Goo. What if opponent blocks my Q spot? Is there anywhere else for it? I'm not sure there is, so this could be problematic. Great, my Q spot remains available. Good bingo for opponent. He now leads by 10 points. But I've got cheese here for 32. And opponent would have bingoed anyway with Stonia because Govs is good. Albeit he would have scored less. Just checking to see if opponent's created any new places for my Q, and he hasn't. So cheese for 32. Not a good pickup. I'm not drawing well in this game. 18 tiles in the bag. Let me check the vowel situation. 10 vowels out of 25, so slightly vowel dry. And look at this, only one E to come. So remaining tiles not bingo-y. This could be a grim nip and tuck battle to the death. Good score for opponent. Gold takes nothing in front, so opponent's provided absolutely no opportunities. Now, what can I do? And I'd like to hang on to my E. I do have the S for Govs. 8 minutes on my clock. And what I need to do is keep scoring. And I can do that with WAP, however you pronounce it, for 23 points. Is there a higher scoring spot for those tiles? Well, I could play WAP and Woe, but that can't be good, giving opponent access to row O. WAP provides nothing. I'm going with this. Wow, a lot of vowels, which is good to see. It may mean opponent is short on vowels, and there aren't too many floating vowels on the board. I'm just wondering about unleash. I don't think that's good, and in any event, there's nowhere for it. I'm looking at this V to see if it is a bingo floater, and it's not. Dietitian does take an S, but there aren't any SV words which play. I think Ars Vogel is the only one which comes to mind. So at the moment, the only bingo lane on this board is row N, which means I need to prioritize scoring, and that may be difficult with only 1 pointers. And look at this, opponent continuing to score well and leading by 13 points. 7 minutes on the clock, 8 tiles in the bag. Opponent has provided absolutely nothing. So value for 16. That does create openings, but I think it's impossible to avoid doing so. Opponent's play of cab has choked up the top of the board. There's nothing available top right. The C is stopping plays down from the F, and I think a play down from the Y would be more dangerous than value. I'm creating a spot for XI, but there's only one X, there's only one I. And if opponent does play XI, well, X takes an E. So I have seniors and sonaries, which will play if opponent plays XI. 4 tiles in the bag. This is a really nice rack. It's just come far too late. But look at this, just 3 points between us. And drawing the second S means I no longer have to fear opponent having won. I'm just wondering if I have a play which goes underneath Gu and Azure. I need to remind myself of all of the anagrams of seniors. So there's also Ornises. That doesn't play. Let me just check seniors and sonaries in all positions. No. What about Sonzia? Wow, yes, Sonzia plays Goon and Azias. Wow, and opponent must be distracted by value. He absolutely must be. There's very few other places to play. Yeah, and I don't think if he does play around value, he cannot block Sonzia. Ornises is the other anagram, but that doesn't play anywhere. Six minutes on my clock, 12 on opponents. And what a horror show the remaining tiles are. I guess if opponent's got the J rather than the X, well, if he plays Joe, Joe takes an S in front, so I don't think that's going to stop me from bingoing. But some other play, bottom left, might. With my rack, I can't really do much with value. I'm just looking around to see if there are any parts of the board I've overlooked for bingo lanes. And I have no candidate plays in mind should my bingo be blocked. It is a super tight board. Look at this, 3 points between us. Goo takes nothing in front. Bop has only got 6 tiles after it. Paired takes nothing in front. What about row F? Well, that's a ridiculous number of overlaps to consider. And yeah, there are no bingo lanes bottom right. With only 4 tiles in the bag, opponent must realise that I probably have a bingo rack. Wow, look at this, Sonzia not blocked. But is Sonzia the play? What about column 2? No, that's not going to score anything like what this scores. Sonzia for 94. Bang! 2 tiles on my rack, W and T, and a heap of junk on opponents, and I lead by about 70 points. Opponent needs a monster JX play, and I don't think he's got one. If he plays Giux in column 13, or Je, as the French say, that's just not going to score enough. So, can I go out in one? I can, because I've got wet with the E of value and also with the E of Sonzia. Fantastic. So I just need to concern myself with where is the best spot for me to go out. With a P, I would have Toop. P in WAP. Where's the other P? Paired, so that's not available. I think I can be fairly systematic here. I have W and T. Wort is good. MTE isn't. Okay, well, let me just continue that. I have 4 minutes on my clock. W and T. Tor and nut. That's going to score more. Great, so that exercise was worthwhile. Tor for 17. And the final score, 371 for my opponent, 450 for me, a winning margin of 79 points, so a huge, huge win. Let's see what I missed. Wow, what a game. It was so tight before Sonzia. That made all the difference. So it was me to go first, and I played that shameful phony before finding Valia. And this is opponent's rack. Look at this, no bingo, but he has dictats on his rack. So thwarted. Plays tack, and I have Hyenic as a double-double for 68. Opponent does now bingo with Dietitian, which was a great spot. All 9-letter words are great spots, pretty much. And he had a choice of other plays. No bingo for me. And I played Gov to leave Reed as my rack leave. And opponent's rack. No bingo here. He would have had over fire through an R. Plays Vo. And this is a rack I fussed about with. And I was concerned about wrecking the rack and providing scoring spots for opponent. So in the end I did move for 11, keeping Reed. So is Reed 16 points better than O? Well, it might be. O, I would say, is minus 2 or 3. And Reed, well, it's definitely more than plus 10. Somewhere between 10 and 15. So I think these moves probably aren't too far apart. Opponent's rack plays Ferrier. Wow, D1 Zaire for 53. I didn't spot that. D2 Dazer for 42. F2 Zyram, that's nice. But look at these rack leaves, all pretty undesirable. So what I did was Azure for 30, ditching the U. Well, tricky, very tricky. Zaire is certainly a very volatile play, so even if it simulates best, it is going to be volatile. And I think when you have a lead, it's good to try and keep the volatility down. Very tricky position to judge, but Azure certainly does have some merit. Opponent's rack plays paired. And now I have Mifty, which I think got me out of jail because this was a grim-looking rack. Opponent's rack struggling with O's, plays Goo. And I have a pretty rubbishy rack, but Bident sorts it out at the expense of creating volatility, which is exactly what happens as opponent bingos to take the lead. And I have the Q, but fortunately I have a really nice spot to jettison it. Opponent's rack plays gold, and now 14 tiles in the bag, and just 9 points between us. Gosh, N2, I didn't do that. Waps for 40. Gosh, that is a big score. Yep. I get nothing like that. I play WAP for 23. Yeah, tricky. Because this board is so tight, I do lead. And there are some big scoring tiles out there. Now, opponent's rack plays Cab. And I wasn't feeling great at this point. I trail. I've got only 1-point tiles on my rack, and there are very few bingo lanes. So I play Value for 16. And these big plays in row N are really just opening up massive scoring opportunities in row O, so I'm not a big fan of them. Value for 16. 4 tiles in the bag. Opponent plays O, and this is the critical point, and Sonzia, wow, the only bingo. So quite fortunate that OH didn't block it. And it secured the win. Nothing opponent can do. He plays Judd, and I go out with Tor. So, what a game. Absolutely incredibly close. We were within 10 points of each other going into a really, really tight pre-end game. And then I got a really good stroke of good fortune with opponent playing O and my bingo involving 3 overlaps slotting in. But that does happen, and you need to keep your eyes open and spot those opportunities when they're available. And I think that was partly driven by the discipline of trying to recall all of the anagrams of seniors prior to opponent playing. Anyway, all good fun. Many thanks to my opponent for a great battle. I always do have a great battle with this particular opponent, so it's always a pleasure when we meet in battle. I hope you enjoyed watching that game, and I will see you next time.